My name is Percy Deal. Percy Deal in Shinrate in Sade, Nashachil Jimberade. Sha'adet Lichin Hakitle, Ado Shada Ashigo Ada Ikehashte. Don't I the dish killed? Oh, I just want to make comment regard to all four panels and also the discussion given at noon by Winona. I really appreciate being here with you all day, listening to the various points and research results and opinions and so forth about government development. I just wanted to make some comment. I want to make comment regard to an earlier discussion this morning about power. You know, there was discussion, a panel that discussed that, power, authority, and so forth. And over the years, I'm 63 years old, and I've been in government, whether it be county government or Navajo Nation government, for a good part of my life. My major was in engineer. I came out of school, I got my engineer degree in 1971. And in 1971, there was a big disturbance going on as a result of the land dispute between the Navajo Hopi and the federal government. And I came home with an engineer degree. My family's out in Big Mountain. I was there. And at the same time, there was a big uprising, civil rights uprising all over the country, the Black and the Native American. And I'm assuming that during that period, the Native American put a lot of pressure on the federal government, particularly Department of Interior and BIA. And BIA were forced to look for people to hire, particularly Native that are graduating out of colleges and university. And I just so happened to graduate in 1971. I came home with an engineer degree, and my mom and dad told me about a week later after I came home, they said, there's a meeting right down the road here, underneath Big Mountain, under a tree. So I went down there, and sure enough, there was a big rally going on by particularly the older population. They were really angry and frustrated with the federal government. And up at the panel was a bunch of white folks coming out of Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. They're over here under the trees and trying to speak to them. And they couldn't get their message across, nor can these guys get their message across to the people. So the folks look among themselves and they said, we really need help to speak to these people and then hear what they are saying. And then the folks in the local area, recognizing my parents, they said, well, this family over here just had a young man graduating out of school. You know, he's sitting right there. Why don't we call on him and maybe he can help us? Well, anyway, that's the day that I would enter into the political world. And I did not spend not even one day in my major section, which is the engineer. I tell people that, you know, if I was an engineer, had I been an engineer, you would all have good roads today. Well, anyway, that's how my life began. Immediately, as a young man, I got into the political issue, a huge issue which was beyond all of us. And I've learned over those years a little bit about power. And one of those power that was being discussed up here, and I've seen it all day through the panel. It's the power of people power. Power is people, and people is power. And the other one is water. Water is precious, water is life. So if you put the two of them together, you have a tremendous power, which in our case, the Navajo Reservation, we really don't have neither. Let me explain why. You know, we have Navajo population that are being sent off with scholarship to various colleges and university. But at the same time, our elderlies and our parents teaches us. That means as you leave your home, as you leave your nest, you're going to take a route, learn something, educate something. And as when you feel that you have learned as much as you can, you will return and then take us with you along. It's a circle that they're talking about. But yet, on the Navajo Nation, yes, we send all our kids, we encourage them to get education, send them off to university, spend a lot of money on them. When they come back, there's a gap in between. There's a gap. That circle is never completed simply because of the Navajo Nation policy. We don't embrace we just simply don't have the ability. I mean, the ability is there to embrace our young people when they come back. They go off the reservation. Look at the panel. They came from various universities, Washington, University of Washington, and all over the place. They're Navajos. They're working over there rather than here somewhere. You know, I believe it was 2000 census. I haven't really seen the 2010 census, but one of those census said about 50% of our Navajo population are off the reservation. You know, if you did a economic study among those that are off the reservation, they're working in the various entities, universities, hospital, and so forth. That's where our valuable resources are out there. Somebody was talking about the treaty and the reservation and the boundary. Inside that treaty land, is our elderly, and the younger population that did not get through the education. They live in the social ill. If we don't change that, if we don't open, if we don't close this gap, I see leadership. I just wish that there was more division director and program director, particularly those that are that have their hands into the personnel policy of the Navajo Nation. I wish they were here so that they can hear all these wisdom and strength and knowledge. None of these people are working for the Navajo Nation. I mean, that's horrible. We're losing 50% of our power. The other one, see, I feel that is where one of the biggest problems is. The other one is, like I said, water. Water is life. You know, we have a precious resource that we really don't recognize. Everybody else on the outside recognizes that. You know, as far away as Washington, D.C., Congress, congressional people, they recognize that we have the federal resources. That's why they keep attacking us. People down in the state, they recognize that. And you know, surrounding cities and entities, they recognize that. It is too bad that there's even some within our own, you know, government and Navajo Nation that, you know, is trying to help take that water away from us. If that water is gone, I mean, it's going to be dry. Those are the two, in my opinion, power. That's where power is our population and then water. I wanted to just emphasize that. The other one is our language. Our language is so important because Mr. Avery Denny did a good job in talking about that. You know, our language, Navajo, the Navajo songs, they're all in Navajo. Navajo prayers, they're all in Navajo. Navajo teaching, they're all in Navajo. So it's so important that we try to hang on to our language. The other one is identity, our way of life. Living off the land and respecting the natural resources and respecting our environment. Being wholesome that with where we are. I mean, I'm talking about with nature and the universe. You know, Danny was talking about, or one of the other speaker was talking about learning how to respect in the heaven, the stars, and so forth. You know, the last 3, 4, 5 years, what I've been doing because of the age of my life and my health condition and so forth, I made a decision that I'm going to start walking and running real early in the morning. So I've been doing that. And lately, when I go out, I normally go first toward the east, and you can see all those beautiful stars up there. And there are certain stars that are dancing, it appears. It's like watching a child at a powwow where their outfit has all different colors. Those stars, beautiful stars, they have colors. They're dancing up there. But you know what? There's no audience. You know what I mean by that? There's no audience. That means we're not out there early in the morning enjoying the stars, the beautiful dancing stars out there, the happy stars to be so that we can be happy with them. Our life will be happy with them. We're not watching the beautiful show that's being put on for us. Being wholesome. You know, the other one is that there's been a discussion up here about chapter and IGA. You know, since the IGA, the whole idea is to give power back to the people. Well, I'm a chapter officer and have been for a few years now. And we've been living under the IGA for a while now. And I find out that IGA is not necessarily to serve the people. Let me clarify that. Yes, it's good. It's a good policy, but it leaves out the need to have a chapter out there which is to serve the public. But instead, there are so many policies in there. All of those policies require paperwork that need to be submitted back to the agency or to Window Rock. So what happens is that you're working for Window Rock. You're not working for the chapter over here anymore, for the people. That's what IGA is doing. And I really believe that, I've said to one of the auditors, I said, auditor and also DOJ, what you need to do is go back and attend a seminar of this sort that will tell you what the purpose of the chapter was way at the beginning. That way maybe we can be able to have a better service to the people. I'm sorry I took too long, but that's all right. And I really appreciate all these bright minds up here.
Thank you, Mr. Deal. We have a question in the back, Dion, and then I have a question online after that. And are there any more questions after that you can put your hand up? Just so I can keep it, okay, you and then Mike. And then after that, we'll move into the final remarks from Mr. Tim Begay, who will give a summary of everything else. Okay, I see you.
Shay Dion Benny Nisha. One Sunday will gain Schledo Ashi Bashichin, Nana Togedashe, Dokin Chine Dashanella, Kodoti, Zesna Ahagi, Kodo Benao Ade on Asha, Shije, Kodo Arizona, Joe Ado Edo Shima, Kodo New Mexico, there, so Kot Adi, just Gabora, Ade or Stasha. I wanted to first off thanks to the individuals and the programs and the offices who put this together. I think that this is a milestone that the Navajo Nation is going through to be able to create these kind of dialects and discussions. But one of the questions that I had for the panelists, and I appreciate all of the knowledge that you guys are involved in and that you guys are spreading back to the people. Ayo la kodo shiti aya nore. Di nihi zado hait aha nihi oot iho hait aha nasne nejot edo le naslo she an ni the neni lido an le nasne nejo ha ish ol ye hot the nen ledo bezadish hodlo do le benantinish hodlo do le eight adai sishtil aha ako when I came in earlier this afternoon koel mastan satante Ado intak at osita okoshe ahot. One of the brightest teachings in talking about government restructuring or the future of Navajo people. And it doesn't have to pertain, when I think about traditions, when I say traditions, traditions is how we're living as Navajo people. Not culture, not religion, not faith. Traditions is Navajo people, the reason why we're brown, the reason why we have long eyelashes, the reason why we're able to withstand the heat, the dirt, the windstorms, that we have the ability to herd sheep. That's what tradition is to me. And that grandma that was sitting there is a fine example of what traditions is and the continuation of Navajo people. And the panel that it may have been spoken earlier, and I wanted to hear from whoever wants to take this question on, is how do we, in the plans of government restructuring or the thought of the future for Navajo, how do we plan to involve our elders? There's a generation of what they've experienced, and they have the stories to tell on how we can restructure. So that's my question to the panelists. Whichever one of you guys want to take on the question of how do we integrate our elders into our restructuring and our future? Because in 30 years from now, it's a sad thought, but in 30 years, we're not going to have the masanas but scarf tahadlanigi. I don't know if we'll have that, and I want to know how we plan on putting it in. So that's my question to the panel. And then thank you.
Thank you, Dion. Any of you can answer.
Yate, I'll try to take this one, unless you want. I'll say something quickly. I thought a lot about this question, and I tend to get very existential very quickly. Then my thought was like, what's an elder? But that's beside the point. When I think about this, in my experience working in Navajo government and working with the Navajo Nation, and I know that this may not be a very popular opinion, but I was a chapter official in Sweetwater for a couple of years. I was worked very closely with a lot of my elders there. And all elders have wisdom, but sometimes some have more wisdom than others when it comes to certain questions. And I know that that's probably not the best thing to say, because we're taught somehow, somewhere, to have critical minds, but then somehow when it comes to elders, we switch off our critical thinking capacities. I don't think that's right. My uncle, Nathad, I have all these uncles who are medicine men. And when I talk with them, they always say, how come you're not asking me any questions? How come you're not pushing me on that point? Maybe I'm the only one who have elders that ask me to challenge them. But I think when we start talking about reform, we give so much authority and power to the elders that it inhibits our ability to move forward. Because we don't have the capacity to ask clear questions to them. They're waiting for us to ask questions. They're waiting to help us think it through. But oftentimes we just stop and we do what they tell us to do. And sometimes for them, clarifying questions will help them say, oh yeah, there's a coyote story that goes along with that. But if we don't ask the question, if we don't challenge them, that coyote story remains untapped. And so when I think about working with elders, we have to sit down with them, we have to ask difficult questions to them. Because there are things that they've not experienced. There are things that are new, that's entirely new to them. But the coyote may have dealt with it in a different way, and they know that. But we just have to help them with guiding questions to get there. We may not know that. We don't know all the stuff that they know, but we have to ask the questions to them. And oftentimes, in my experience, when I work with the youth, they just sit there and they just listen. And oftentimes they go away and I don't know what she was saying. I don't know how that's supposed to help governance. Did you ask any questions? No. I think that becomes a handicap. I know when I was a chapter official, they always threw that back at me. And so it goes both ways, from the elders back to the youth. They have to learn to work with each other. That idea of in the most pejorative sense needs to get out of our language as well. And I think that's where there's a hindrance when you start working with these elders. And I know that language is a big problem as well, but I believe that in terms of a mechanism, there's a lot of them that are around, of sitting down with them, going into these communities, sitting at chapter meetings, making them a part of the governing commission. I think they have some seats for elders here. And even moving forward, bring these elders in who have that knowledge and capacity to think sharply. Not to suggest that all elders don't think that way, but some of them have more experience in different areas than others. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, for your question. I'm currently taking care of my grandmother now, so this is something that I'm thinking about a lot as we, see our elders slowly leave us for a different life. Every month, it seems, our communities are losing our elders. And I think this goes a lot into what I really believe about decolonization as a practice, not merely a theory, is that part of our situation that we find ourselves in, a part of the structure of our communities that disrupts that communication between our elders and our youth, is this idea of leadership that's very Eurocentric, that is based on an idea that it's a male position appointed to speak for the people. And in that context, we lose the fact that leaders are made. They're born, they're made, they're developed over a lifetime, and our elders have wisdom and experiences that can inform each part of our decision-making process, both on the community level and on the nation level, and that they too, are suffering from the way our society has been structured and has been changed from, throughout our history. I mean, I'm sure several of the panelists talked about it. I know I spoke about it a little bit. And part of that belief, as was pointed out, is that they reach a certain point where they can no longer think. They become useless. How many of our elders right now are in nursing homes off the reservation? We impose these ideas on them that we're struggling with now that keep them from communicating with each other and making that learning a lifetime experience. Our elders don't have the forum where they sit in on a council that we can go to for advice, that we can present our ideas to for them to ruminate and for them to provide their wisdom for. And that's why I think it's so important to develop a constitution based on our genetic heritage, on our values, on how we knew how to appreciate some of the most marginalized groups in this American society, our women, our children, and our elders. And making them a part of a political system, of a leadership system that gives them the authority and the legitimacy to weigh in their unique perspectives on every decision that is made as we move forward. That is nation building, not someone that is elected by an electorate and feels he then, from that point on, has the ability to speak for the people, but leaders of a nation of leaders, of a nation of people who have their own talents, their own perspectives, their own experiences that are just as valid as everyone else when we come together and discuss plans that will affect everybody in our communities. When we create that type of structure, I think we'll be able to start, or when we start to realize that that's the structure that we should be aiming for, I think we'll find more ways as we communicate with our communities on how exactly that would be done. But no one person should try to present the solution on how to do that. This discussion needs to involve those very people we're talking about, our grandmas and our grandpas, our Che's and our Nallies, and bring them into this type of room and provide them the forum where they can inform us on how that can be done.
Thank you. We have time for possibly 2 more questions, and then we'll go into our closing summary. I hate to do this, but just so that we have time to reflect on all of the panels and presentations today, that's the timeline we're going to follow. This question comes from Jeremy Williams in Flagstaff. He asks the panel, the need to decolonize is predicated on an understanding that many people have become colonized. As such, various modes of imperial authority have become accepted by many Dene, things like capitalism, industrial democracy. In order to establish a government that is, quote, legitimate, must these tools of the empire be challenged first?
All right, there. I don't really understand what that question means. There's a lot of words in it that I think could be interpreted in so many different ways. And that's one of the problems that we have to overcome. Everybody has differing opinions. And so in the way that we're trying to set up this constitutional movement, we create a system where people with opposing ideas can come together and work together. And going back to the last question, by taking it to the chapter level, there, the elders participate in the government quite often more than the young people. There, they have an avenue to talk about their opinions and bring their wisdom to the table as well, too. I don't quite understand what it means to be colonialized or anything like that, because quite frankly, if you let somebody take power over you, they have power over you. It's up to you to give that power away. So as to that question, I'm not quite certain about that, but in the framework that we come together and we work this out, we have room for different opinions there, so thanks.
To the internet viewer, I think it's right. I think the question, the assumption of the question is right. That and what at least what I'm saying, in my understanding of government reform is there has to be at least a degree of interrogation and challenging of these existing modes of oppression that are within the Navajo Nation and elsewhere. Because if we're not interrogating them, we're not understanding them. If we're not understanding them, we don't know what to do. They'll continue to exist if we don't understand them. And someone said earlier before that we shouldn't be reading John Locke and other stuff, and I say we should. We should become better experts on who John Locke is than the people who claim that they're experts. Because if we are better experts than they are, we understand why John Locke is wrong. We just can't avoid it. We just can't not avoid not reading. We have to become better experts on the American system of government than all the theories of professors and scholars of government, because we have to understand why that system of government doesn't work for Navajo. We have to understand the minute details, we have to understand the implications, and that's part of the whole challenging process of what a capitalist system is. We have to understand what it is in order to challenge it. We just can't say, oh, there's capitalism over there, we don't want it. And then we begin to reproduce it in our economies. We have to, and so I think the assumption, the question is right, we have to continue to interrogate and challenge those existing modes of oppression.
I absolutely agree. Just one more thought. In challenging and creating that dialogue, that's when we have the opportunity to not only learn, but to also understand that in some ways it doesn't necessarily, decolonization doesn't necessarily mean a complete rejection of what we're critiquing or what we're experiencing. Sometimes it may mean that we decide that this is the best process. Decolonization is taking over the control over that choice, that decision making, how you engage in that. Not necessarily just coming up and outright rejecting these values, whether it's capitalist, whether it's American democracy, whether it's any of these Americanized concepts. We know that a lot of us, enjoy the luxuries that have been afforded. Our ancestors taught us, our philosophies teach us that things happen for a reason, that the process of our past informs our present, which continues to inform our future. But decolonization is not allowing an outside entity or some removed force to make the decision for how we move forward from this point on. It's about taking that control back on our communities, and that absolutely does mean confronting these imperialist values on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. I'm going to ask that somebody who hasn't asked a question so far. Sorry, Mike. If you have questions, you can talk to the panelists afterward. They'll be here for a few minutes, hopefully. So, Mr. Yellowman, if you don't mind coming all the way up here and asking your question.
My name is Don Yellowman. I'm from the western part of the Navajo Nation out there in Tuba City Way. So I'm thankful for this opportunity to be here before you. This is great and wonderful that I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, to have a lot of our young Dene youth to have a forum to discuss on intellectual level their areas of study, their research, and things that they feel passionate about to create the environment of a discussion on an intellectual level. So I appreciate that. Thank you for organizing this and the panelists that are here. I want to ask a question and have some of the panelists elaborate a little bit more about their thoughts on some current events that are ongoing. I came back from college in the 80s, and my background is more in agriculture. And so I was an elected official for 10 years on the Navajo Nation in that area. And right now, one of the hottest news, which I was at a couple days ago, in my chapter at Gatba-Ottaway, is the development proposal on the Escalade project. And the thing that I posed the question to, or the statement that I was trying to make to my fellow community members, was to say to them that as community members, let's set the bar high to say that in the former Bennett freeze, we have sacrificed. And in now that it has been lifted, you should look at yourselves as you deserve the ultimate respect to be approached, to see what you think and what you want for the future of your kids, grandchildren, to have something that would be sustainable and therefore ever for years to come. You deserve that respect as a people. And so my point to them was that as the status quo has always been, it seems like, because like I said, I've been back since the 80s on the Navajo Nation, looking at agriculture, that's my area, I don't see the investments made in the area where our government, I feel, should play a critical role to back up the people what has been like their bread and butter. We seem to jump on the bandwagon where it's like a bonus thrown out to us, and then it's like we have to jump on the bandwagon or else we get nothing. And so my point to my community members was that set the bar high and say this is what we want as a people. Don't look at it as if we don't get this, then we're going to get nothing. Put yourself, the analogy I use sometimes is the Navajo Nation is driving our pickup truck. We gave them the keys to turn the key and drive the pickup truck. But for some reason, we chose and accepted the fact that we can sit in the back of the pickup. Not in the passenger seat, but in the back of the pickup. And by allowing that, things don't go our way. So that's why I think in this youth movement here, and the younger Janene people, they want to ask questions in the area of energy policies. Where is that leading us? It's all kind of solely controlled at the top level with a select few, but not driven with things that the principles that people would like to strive after. And I see the same thing. I was here witnessing the 3 referendums that took place on the casino. The last one meant yes, meant no, no meant yes, things like that. And now we're going on to this latest, like I said, the Escalade project. So I'm saying to the people, picture yourselves, envision a future where you are going to be insisting to move your way from the back of the pickup truck to the driver's seat, to control the pickup and drive the pickup. Right now, we're in the back. And we're sometimes saying that's okay. So I want to have the panelists elaborate to those points there as to, I find it mind-boggling, a nation this big as the Navajo Nation, how long can it go on this course determining for the people what's best for the people? When I think, like Percy Deal said, we have 50% of our people off the res where they're valuable resources. But I think if you don't allow the people to determine their own destiny, then that continues, that trend. Because when the people participate and build their own nation as they see fit, as what they want, then those people from off the res come home and want to help their relatives and be a part of their community, to build their community. That's what I see. So I want the panelists to elaborate and expand on why is it that we feel helpless and in the back of the pickup truck, that we're not in control, and how does that now, how do we move forward to advance our cause as a people, to be in our own, control our own destiny? How do we do that? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, Don, it's good to see my relatives come all the way from Western out here for these meetings too. It's a long drive for us. It's a very good question on this point here, and quite honestly, that's the whole reason I think that we need to examine this intensely. Right now, the U.S. government, through its Park Service, allows 30,000 of the 1% to play in the confluence. They allow hikers to climb up the LCR Gorge to go play at the Hopi sacred sites. You can look at pictures on the internet. The 1% are the ones that can afford doing the river rafting down that river right now. That river never used to run. That's why it's called Colorado. It only ran seasonally. That dam changed everything, and now that's why that water runs. My community of Tachii has a giant lake next to us because of that dam. Things change, and usually we're not in the driver's seat, as my relative Don said, but that's our reasoning. Why should we be impacted by other people's actions? Why aren't we in charge of it? Right now, we have our hand out to the federal government. Like you look at the Navajo Times, we're so worried about losing the crumbs from the federal economy there. The US is broke. The US is dead broke. It's borrowing money from foreign governments right now. How come we're worrying about asking money from people that have to borrow it from others? How come we don't create ourselves? Now, there are a lot of differing points on this thing, and I don't want to get into the specifics beyond there. But again, this is an interesting example because the community of Gap just the other day voted 59 to 52 to 17 abstained. I mean, that's a very close vote. And you compare that to a vote in my community of Tachii, where I'm working with Toshiba to build a solar plant to fix that power plant in our community. You know, we're starting this. We're not just talking about it, we're actually doing it. Our community is unanimous on this stuff. And there are outside agitators that come onto Navajo and tell us how to think. We need to reason ourselves because, again, we can't go back to the old ways. You know, I'll give you a perfect example about this. I volunteered for 3 years to try to fix the snowball issue. You know, I worked trying to bring everybody together on this. And protesters were out there being funded by outside groups as well, too, to come in and protest on it. But we were trying to work with the Navajo peacemakers to come in and buy the ski resort so that no snowmaking would ever occur there. You know, and we had a great meeting with the medicine men, and they were talking about how we must be in balance. And one of the folks at the table, when they came up, said, well, it's an interesting point. We're not supposed to drink anything too cold or anything too hot, but at this table over here at the Quality Inn, everybody had a glass of water with ice in it. Everybody had hot coffee next to them. Everybody came in a vehicle. Nobody came running in. Nobody came in by horseback. So where did that oil come from? It came from some foreign land that was shipped over here. Did we leave offerings for that? Everybody had a cell phone that they were busily checking while we were meeting. We always complain about change except for those things that we accept. But we always have to utilize the tools at hand to create the change that's beautiful. And that's my belief in this thing. How do we create something beautiful out of something negative? And you know, I think we all try to work together, and I think it's coming together in this thing. I know the community of Gap certainly has to heal on this, and every single perspective must be listened to. And quite honestly, I do feel that maybe that vote was way too close. Maybe the community should look at it again. Perhaps there's 1,100 plus registered voters in that community. Maybe they should look at a referendum and let everybody speak, because there's 80% of that community that's unemployed. You know, the Bennett freeze is still in effect to this day. You know, Obama might have signed a piece of paper, but you don't see anything changing out there. You know, the only way to change it takes money, and the federal government has none, and they don't really care, quite honestly. You know, to be completely honest, they don't give a damn about the Navajo people. We have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, and thank you for your question, John. It's a very, very difficult and, you know, it's a complex topic, as everyone here knows, who come from families who are unemployed, who have little to no investment in their schools and their communities, or in housing infrastructure, or in road infrastructure. This is a problem that's very dear to everyone's heart in whatever community that you're at. The problem with feeling that you're not in the driver's seat when you're within the community within which this development is being proposed is because the system is not meant to incorporate the opinions of people who get in the way of profit. It's not meant to listen to ideas that aren't based on profit margins and on giving back the investment plus multipliers for those who put the money forward to fund the implementation of the profit. What we have is a nation that doesn't let communities decide what their needs are for themselves and how to meet those needs in sustainable ways. We don't have a nation that brings in experts or people who are already developing wonderful ways of alleviating poverty in communities all over the world to our reservation to help our people reimagine the course of development that we're on. What's needed in the Bennett Freeze area and the Gap Bodaway area are people who need homes, who need an ability to access healthy food, who need electricity, and there are ways to get these things without relying on our archaic institutions of power, of energy consumption, and of development. There are communities that are taking into their own hands building energy efficient homes out of recyclable materials. And these homes are beautiful. And these communities that are doing it are not native, but they are utilizing native philosophies, values, and wisdom to structure and revolutionize the way they're meeting their community needs. Why is our nation ignoring this? Because the people who are invested in these projects have a profit to lose. Because the people who are invested in this project are gonna lose the privilege of being business owners, of being adapted and accepted into this system of power that requires domination and exploitation of, like I said in my presentation, land, resources, and people. We need to take those reins back. The community at Gap, Bodaway, Bennett Freeze, the community, my community in Sasa'ana, the communities all over our reservation have the capacity, have the materials to build our own houses, to bring investment in. Our Navajo Nation has funds. We just saw them lose 6.3 million of it. We have the ability to bring in investments in sustainable energy that will allow our people to not only enjoy modern luxuries and technologies, but also revitalize our old ways of meeting our own needs, that empower our communities, that create food security on healthy foods, traditional foods, and that allow us to then, from that point on, construct a new revolution of industrialism, of Dene capitalism, and of a Dene economy that's controlled by us.
Thank you, panelists. I'm a little bit skeptical on capitalism personally, but we can talk about that later. Dene capitalism. Okay, we'll have that conversation some other time. So this is the end of our presentation, our final panel, and so we can give him another round of applause, please.